Well, there's nothing like watching the debate as it exists right now to make you really hanker for a third party to liven things up a bit. Well, once again, we have a debate between Obama and McCain, and once again, very few questions are actually answered. I mean, there was a decent question or two asked, but both these characters are so tied up in trying to shoehorn their talking points into their answer to the question that very little actual responding was going on. And I found it a very disappointing debate, honestly, because I got to the point where I was starting to predict what the candidates were going to be saying. And true to form, I mean, there was very little evolution of their stances. And it was very much, like I said, them just trying to figure out how they could get their stump speech into what they were saying. Let's see some of the points that I saw. A bunch of, when they were talking about energy, inefficient dinosaurs like nuclear and clean coal were talked about, as well as offshore drilling. Both of them talking about offshore drilling. Generally speaking, Obama is more reasonable on all of this stuff. He says that offshore drilling is not a serious answer. It's only something that can help out in the short term. We have, of course, the ridiculous tax cut conversation, with both of them talking like they can actually afford to give these tax cuts that they're talking about. This is where I think Obama actually made some decent points in terms of fairness, talking about how it's so unfair to give these huge corporations and the people who are already rich who are running them huge tax cuts in addition to the Bush tax cuts. I think he scores a point or two there, with people who are thinking about the proceedings. I like the point where McCain was calling for a freeze on spending, except for defense, of course, which is, that enormous black part of the budget where all the money goes into. There was talk about the surge of McCain saying, Obama still won't admit that the surge was, a good idea, when honestly he actually has. He just won't say it in the debate and make McCain's points for him. But then again, and this is something that I think Obama should be hammering him on, because McCain is always asking for his apology on the surge, or for him to admit that the surge was, a good idea. Why isn't, Obama in the exact same way hammering McCain for an apology and hammering McCain to admit that he was wrong going in on Iraq? Maybe even say, well, we'll exchange apologies. I'll exchange an apology on the surge for you apologizing for getting us into the Iraq War. But I mean, neither one of those things are going to be happening. Let's see what else. I thought it was really funny in the foreign policy discussion that McCain actually said the phrase, "You need to have a cool hand at the tiller." Good luck, John McCain, trying to portray Obama as the hothead of the two of you. I'm not sure how that's going to work out. I'm interested to see how you're going to actually get this. Maybe it's those Ayers associations you're going to try to pin on to make him seem like he's kind of some crazy hothead. And of course, you have the continuous run of lies about Afghanistan and about Iran from both candidates. And this is the part of it that really gets to me. And I mean, like I said in my last kind of debate wrap-up, I mean, I think Obama will be better for people in this country a bit. His policies will be a bit more fair to the extent that he's going to be able to manage it in our really constricted economic times. But when it gets to foreign policy, honestly, it's just really hard to tell the difference from them. I mean, with Obama trying to look so stern and angry and, warlike in these debates. And I mean, I know there are a lot of people who say, well, he's got to be that way, otherwise people won't believe that he's going to be tough enough to, do the job, etc. And I just don't have a great deal of patience with that. Because, I mean, how are we ever going to have any more peaceful propositions being put on the table? I mean, now, I think the Republicans can rightfully call him on waffling. You know, if he gets into office and all of a sudden starts, you know, acting the great peacemaker, you know, if he gets into office and suddenly he's Gandhi, you know, there are going to be all of these Republicans calling for his head and rightfully accusing him of flip-flopping and, you know, you said you were going to be so tough and blah, 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 and now you're just being a big goddamn pussy and we can't believe it that you're, you know, trading away America's honor like this. You know, you're going to have another bad situation. So at some point, you have to have the courage of your convictions, and you have to start looking for ways in which you can prosecute peace and make arguments for peace, because you're not doing that right now. I mean, if Obama wanted to, like, you know, not join McCain in going crazy about Iran, it'd be very easy to point out that our own national intelligence estimates, you know, say that Iran gave up their nuclear program. That's a valid argument to make. And that makes you more different from McCain, and, you know, picks up people like me, progressives, who are looking for some kind of reasonability in the foreign policy. Same thing, you know, with Afghanistan and with Pakistan. I mean, nobody's talking about the fact that, like, these countries are arbitrarily set up, much as Iraq was, to be, you know, weak nations that are dividing powerful tribes in the region, and therefore setting these things up to be failed states. You know, I heard someone talking about Greater Pashtunistan, and I mean, that's really what the problem is. There is no home for the Pashtun people, which is this enormous tribe that goes across the border from, you know, Afghanistan, you know, to Pakistan, and generally represents, like, the harsher parts of both countries. But part of the reason why these people are so upset is because they've been divided up and they've been basically handed over to two other, you know, groups of people, and so they're constantly fighting for power, much in the same way that, like, you know, the Al-Qaeda presence in Iraq, the Kurds, you know, are a thorn in everybody's side because they don't have a place to be. You know, they've been parceled out between Turkey, Iran, and Iraq, and they have no place to call their own. And of course, that means they're pissed at everyone. But, you know, I saw very little sophistication in terms of foreign policy. What I saw is the repeating of old lies about the nature of the world, and two guys who probably know what the world is like, but were trying really hard to pretend that they had no idea, and just repeating crap that they think would either frighten the American public, and trust me, Obama did his own share of fear-mongering this evening, or, you know, we're telling Americans comfortable fictions about the world. And I just wanted to end up by reading something from my daughter. My daughter is 8 years old, and she's actually watched the last two debates, this one and the one between Biden and Palin. And she was very serious about it. I mean, my son couldn't handle the debates at all. You know, he's older, he's 10, but he just could not hack them. But my daughter was sitting there with her little notebook, you know, writing notes and everything, and trying to figure out the issues. And this is something she wrote after the Biden-Palin debate. Her name is Devin. Devin thinks if a country attacks us, then we can send our troops into that country. But if we send our troops into a harmless country, we'll become a hated country. Because if there is no reason to go into the other country, that just makes us a mean country. So, right now, my major challenge is trying to figure out how to explain to my daughter that she's actually too moral to run the country. This is Zach, and as always, you can feel free to argue.